But the winds high up in the air and the computers, the combination, have pushed back today's scheduled launch of Discovery. Pushed back an hour and perhaps more. Earliest launch time remains 10:59 a.m. Eastern Time, and NASA's counting down to that. The difficulty is and continues to be those winds, say 25,000 feet up and above. The wind speeds are too low and from the wrong direction, because the shuttle's computers were programmed to guide Discovery for the kinds of winds expected this time of year. The trouble is the winds are acting like it's spring up there, not autumn. So down on the ground, the Discovery crew is ready to go. The shuttle is fueled up and fit to fly. And for miles around the Kennedy Space Center, up and down the roads and along the shoreline, people have turned out by the thousands hoping to see what we haven't seen for more than 2.5 years, an American shuttle launch light up the sky. The astronauts would be happy to oblige them. The 5 members of the Discovery crew are suited up, waiting around in their new, improved, but probably not very comfortable 84 pounds of gear, including the 70-pound spacesuits, waiting to fly. They and we are waiting to see if the winds up there change to within the new strict wind and weather condition margins for safety that NASA now goes by. We'll be keeping you up to date as the day goes along here. For right now, Dan Rather at the Kennedy Space Center. We'll be checking with you again soon.
This special report has been part of CBS News' continuing coverage of the flight of Discovery.
But, and this is the positive sign, just outside the margin now of safety by a percent or two. And the trend on those winds may be getting better. The crew members of Discovery have been told to hang in there, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're all strapped down inside the shuttle now, ready to go if the word comes that the winds will allow it. Officially, launch time is still an hour behind schedule. The official schedule now still at 10:59 a.m., but the indications are that it is unlikely that they would launch as early as 10:59. They could, of course, launch shortly behind that. But the indications are that if they're going to launch today, that it will be sometime after 10:59 a.m. Eastern Time. The problem so far today has been wind speeds up above 25,000 feet that are too low and from the wrong direction, at least wrong in terms of what the shuttle computers have been programmed to handle. But the latest word is the winds are getting better, so stay tuned. We'll be here to update you as things develop. Dan Rather, CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center. The winds at, say, 25,000 feet and above over us are now running close to the margin of safety NASA needs to launch Discovery today. 11:20 Eastern Time is now the earliest it's considered they can launch. The latest would be shortly before 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The astronauts are ready, the shuttle is ready, NASA is ready. They're just waiting, still waiting, for word that the wind speeds have picked up enough and the wind direction has shifted enough in line with what the Discovery computers have been programmed to handle. The Discovery crew members have been told to hang in there. They and we will be doing just that. We're here waiting to let you know if and when the countdown resumes and the winds are right. 11:20 Eastern Time, now the earliest time that they will launch. So from hang in there headquarters at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, Dan Rather. See you later.
This special report has been part of CBS News' continuing coverage of the flight of Discovery. The flight of Discovery. Return to space. From CBS News headquarters at the Kennedy Space Center, here is Dan Rather.
If they do what they hope to do, Discovery will be launched about 20 minutes from now. They'll put it up at 11:30. Good morning again, everyone. The winds have shifted in the right direction and the right speed way up high. Those winds now within the margin of safety that NASA needs to try for a launch today. Launch could come at 11:30 Eastern Time. That would be the earliest they would launch, and that's what they're now aiming for. The last launch opportunity today would be shortly before 2 p.m. Eastern Time, more like 1:30 Eastern Time this afternoon. Now, the launch could come sooner or not at all today. This is not a precise business of trying to launch a shuttle, not precise when you're dealing with the kind of winds they've had today, unexpected winds high up there. The winds up around 25,000 feet were too low in speeds and were coming from the opposite direction that NASA was planning for. That's now changed for the better. So the winds up there are compatible with what NASA had programmed in the computers. And the shuttle itself is all ready to go. The crew's aboard, strapped in and ready to go. This morning, thousands of people lined up all up and down the Florida Space Coast, hoping to see them light up the shuttle and send it up for the first time in 32 months. Earlier today, the shuttle crew obliged by giving something else not seen here in a long, long time, the NASA astronaut wave. And then the other familiar sight, watching a shuttle crew suit up and get into the shuttle. The shuttle these brave astronauts hope to fly this morning may not look much different than it used to look, but it is different. There have been hundreds of design changes in the shuttle since Challenger exploded, and a change in attitude that can be summed up in 2 words: safety first. On both scores, new design and new thinking, most of the major changes involve the solid rocket booster that ruptured and destroyed Challenger. A redesigned booster, tested over and over again, is set to launch Discovery. But that's not all. Better, stronger brakes for landing. The shuttle's main engines have been overhauled. The wings are strengthened. And for the first time, an in-flight escape system. The hatch can be blown. The astronauts can slide off a 12-foot pole, clear the shuttle, and parachute down. It only works when the shuttle is gliding. No use should there be a Challenger-type accident during liftoff. The new shuttle program may be improved, the new watchwords may be safety first, but it isn't risk-free. Well, we were just listening to the latest from NASA. Now, here is the situation. They've been hoping to launch, had a go for launch at 11:30 Eastern Time. But there's been a new development. With us now, Jeff Hoffman, who has flown aboard the Space Shuttle. Astronaut Jeff Hoffman, still in the program. Jeff, what is the latest, and does it look like we're going to go at 11:30, or maybe a little later than that?
Well, I'll tell you, I feel for these guys. I had to hold on the pad at T-minus 9 minutes while we waited for weather, and we finally went. I like to feel in my guts that they're going to go. Right now, Bob Crippen is polling the mission management team. He's trying to get goes from everybody. So far, everybody has given a go. A minor glitch, possibly with an oxygen sensor. I'm listening now. It sounds like they're sorting that out. Things are looking good.
You mentioned Bob Crippen. This is one of the changes that has been made. Crippen, an astronaut, has been assigned the job. It doesn't go unless he says thumbs up.
That's correct. He will poll his team. He will then give the launch director the go for launch. Then it's over to the launch team. But Bob Crippen's got to give the go before we go.
Now, for those of you who may have just joined us or may be confused about what's happening here, everything this morning has gone beautifully except those winds way up there, 25,000 feet or above, which were simply too low and in the wrong direction to be compatible with what NASA had put into the computers. They've worked the situation down to a T-minus 9 minutes. That would be 9 minutes to liftoff, and they've been holding there. They hope to start counting again at 11:21 Eastern Time. That would be about 6 minutes from now. And if they are able to do that, then we might have a launch as early as 11:30. Watching with thousands of other people outside the Cape is correspondent Peter Van Sant. Peter, you've been waiting and watching out there for a long time, and I gather that the level of anticipation, tension, and hope is about as high out there as it is here.
Oh, it's tremendous. Tremendous anticipation and excitement, and some nervousness. Even veteran shuttle watchers are a bit nervous about this one. They feel as though we're launching into the great unknown. But right now, thousands of people are out here baking in the sun, waiting for Discovery to make its move. 3-year-old Alexander Summer is among the thousands waiting for Discovery to fly.
Well, it's going to be over there. But I thought it's going to be over there.
Is it going to blast off? The Discovery launch has turned into a waiting game for the thousands of people who have traveled here from all over the country to witness history.
As far as I'm concerned personally, it's pride, and I wish to see the national esteem reestablished.
This is really what I've been looking forward to for the past years, and then finally getting it together is really awesome.
For some, today's possible launch represents a chance to restore some lost confidence in the U.S. space program.
Well, it's been like a teeter-totter. I've gone from one end of the spectrum in that thinking NASA could ever do any wrong to the other end of the teeter-totter and thinking that they could never do any right.
Others will be watching Discovery ride the flame into space with apprehension. The memories of the Challenger disaster still fresh in their minds.
Nervous? Up and away. Sure nervous. we need it, and they're trained for it. And they got to go for it.
Everyone here is hoping they're going to go for it soon. And as I mentioned, there's going to be some white knuckles out here. A lot of fingers crossed as Discovery climbs into space. Everyone is hoping for the best, and we shall see. We are waiting.
Thanks, Peter. And waiting is exactly what we're doing. We're at T-9 and holding. They hope to start the countdown about, 5 minutes from now. And if they're able to start the countdown, once that clock starts, then they would hope to get a liftoff, to get a launch about 10 minutes after that, which would be at 11:30. So if we start the clock down at 11:21 Eastern Time, as they hope, we'd have the launch at 11:30. Joining me here at our CBS News headquarters at the Kennedy Space Center, Bruce Hall, our veteran space watcher. Bruce, you can feel the anticipation rising here. When NASA said, listen, we have a go for launch, which we got, about 16, 17 minutes ago, there was a jump in anticipation. One can only imagine what that crew must be thinking. Is it a different kind of crew for this launch?
Dan, it certainly is a different kind of crew, because this time, for the first time, we have an all-veteran shuttle crew. 5 astronauts who've logged more than 1,000 hours in space, 4 military professionals, and an astronomer. The commander is 47-year-old Frederick Houck, known as Rick, a third-generation Navy man. He has been on 2 shuttle flights, including the first satellite space salvage mission. 42-year-old Richard Dick Covey is the pilot, an Air Force test pilot. He has logged more than 4,000 hours. He piloted Discovery on a virtual error-free flight in August 1985. And it was his voice everyone heard, giving the final instructions to Challenger crew, go at throttle up. John Mike Lounge, 42-year-old astrophysicist. He is in charge of deploying a communications satellite aboard Discovery. A former Navy aviator, he now flies once a week with the Texas Air National Guard. 38-year-old Marine Lieutenant Colonel Dave Hilmers is a computer genius. He flew on the first flight of Atlantis and will be the flight engineer on this trip. George Pinky Nelson, the youngest member of the crew, the only one who has walked in space. He has a doctorate in astronomy and plays in an all-astronaut rock and roll band called Max Q. So it's a different crew. We've never had one with all shuttle veterans before. No rookies this time.
Well, Bruce, we're keeping a close eye on things here. We all have our fingers crossed, knocking on wood, saying a little prayer that they can get it up today. While we wait and see whether they start the clock running again, let's take a break. We'll be right back.
I need a moment in my day.
Yes, sir. I've got a Tuesday test.
Take myself ready.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Nothing's like being invisible, and nothing's better for seeing the forest for the trees. And the good to the last drop feeling of Maxwell House, only Maxwell House. That's the good to the last drop feeling of Maxwell House and me.
Honey, great news. I don't need surgery for my hemorrhoids. The doctor said they're not that serious.
Well, what did he say?
He told me to eat right, get some exercise, and when they act up, use Preparation H.
Thousands of doctors distribute this hemorrhoidal care guide. It advises a fiber-rich diet, exercise, and for flare-ups, try Preparation H for effective therapy against hemorrhoidal symptoms.
Aren't you glad you didn't need surgery?
Doctor recommended Preparation H.
Where can you find the strength to stop aches and pains without a prescription? In Advil. Advil contains the same medicine that's in the prescription brand Motrin, yet Advil is gentle and it's safer to your stomach than aspirin. It's no wonder Advil doctor recommendations have grown each year and now total over 15 million, and the doctors are recommending Advil more and more every day. So why take this or this when today there's Advil? Advil, advanced medicine for pain.
Post Fruit and Fiber presents new Cinnamon Apple Crisp, and a Fruit and Fiber cereal fanatic who never forgets our name.
Right. Never. Hey, this is new. Chunks of really crisp apple, cinnamon. It's fruit and...
Post Fruit and Fiber cereal introduces Cinnamon Apple Crisp with crisp, delicious apples, cinnamon, and high-fiber flakes.
Well, no wonder I forgot. This new taste is terrific.
New Cinnamon Apple Crisp Fruit and Fiber. Tastes so good, you forget the fiber.
No constraints. The consensus is to proceed with NASA, go for launch. We expect to start the countdown again at any moment now. They're looking to launch in approximately 9 minutes from now. However, the clock has not yet started. T-9 and holding as the anticipation level continues to rise here. They've made their checks among themselves. Consensus to proceed. Go for launch was the last word we had. And let's pick up the voice of NASA control here if we can for just a moment.
Go PTC. Okay, IUS went ahead and has finished their final launch configuration. Okay, I copy. Nonetheless, we'll establish a new time and then come out of this count upon that time. And Launch Director, excuse the interrupt, proceed. Okay, well that's all we did, and we can...
Now the important word there is to proceed. And joining me again here at our CBS News coverage headquarters at the Space Center is Jeff Hoffman, astronaut Jeff Hoffman. Jeff, you went through this same thing yourself, a long delay strapped into that space shuttle. What are the astronauts thinking and doing right now, and what should we be looking for as we anticipate the start of the clock?
Let me set the stage for you a little bit. When you see on the screen the steam and the smoke coming out of the engines of the shuttle and coming out the external fuel tank, what you want to realize is that today, fueled up finally and ready to go, the space shuttle, it's almost like a living being as opposed to a dead piece of hardware. When you go out on the pad on launch day and you see the smoke and the flame and the fire and the water and you hear the creaks and the groans, the machine has come alive, and it's a feeling of excitement that it gets into the crew's blood. So, you know, I know how much they want to go, and things are looking good now. They have basically completed all of the arrangements that we had expected up to the 9-minute hold. The computers are in launch configuration. The cabin has been sealed up. The pressure integrity has been checked. They've checked all of the equipment preparatory to starting up the hydraulic units, which will be done about 4 minutes into the count, and so far so good.
Jeff, I wanted to explain, when people saw you with your hand up to your ear, that what you're doing is you're holding up a listening device there.
I'm listening to the crew talking to launch control, so in case anything happens, I'll be able to give you an update.
Just wanted to explain, because people are not accustomed to seeing people on television anymore holding that kind of apparatus up to the ear, but it's to ensure that we hear that everything being said. The crew is in close communication, and you can imagine that inside the orbiter, they've been ready in there. Well, one way of putting it, they've been ready for 2.5 years to fly. But they've been in the orbiter this morning. If you recall, they expected to go at this morning shortly before 10 o'clock Eastern Time.
And they're planning to come out of the hold about 3 minutes from now.
All right, what that means is approximately 3 minutes from now, we'd start the countdown of the clock.
Which would mean about an 11:37 launch.
All right, an 11:37 launch now being anticipated, because the countdown has not yet resumed, although everything looks good now for the countdown to resume. We have a 9-minute countdown once they start counting down, hoping for a liftoff at 11:37. What about the wind problem? Well, the winds began picking up way up there and got in more consistent with what NASA had programmed into its computers. And Bruce Hall, we've been in this situation, this kind of situation, so many times before, where the tension level is high, we're anticipating the clock is about to start, but until you actually get the liftoff, you aren't going to know this is going to go.
You never know, and we've gone down several times to the last couple of seconds. We had a couple of times where we've had an abort at T-3 seconds, T-4 seconds. And we're in a very technological world, and it's a very complex machine. Our hold that we've gone through right now, it's a very simple problem. The astronauts and a couple of the controllers were not able to hear the weather report. And so as the latest information was being relayed, they couldn't hear. So now we're having this delay of about 5, 6, maybe 8 minutes because of that.
Jeff, if you are hearing something of utmost importance at the moment, this is part of the change in philosophy, if that isn't to state it, to overstate it, that NASA has had. That there was a time when NASA was looking to go much more than they are now. The attitude these days is, look, if we don't have everything, that all of our criteria are not in order, then we're not going to press it, we're not going to rush it. We have a lot of time, we'll push over
But I got to
tomorrow.
say one thing, we are still looking to go. But you're right, as far as criteria like the weather and so on, as opposed to an innocent until proven guilty, we've got to assume guilty until proven innocent. Unless everybody can demonstrate positively that we're ready to go, we don't go.
Now, when they resume the clock, which we expect to happen very shortly, with
about 1 minute.
We hope to start it within 1 minute. Now, if the clock resumes, which the countdown starts then, the next thing to happen is the ground computer automatic launch sequence will begin.
That's correct.
All functions remain under ground computer control until the shuttle computer takes over at
31 seconds before the
31
launch.
seconds.
Some of the important things you should be looking for, about 8 minutes, we're going to start the process of bringing the computer onto its own internal power, using its own fuel cells. About 7 minutes, you'll see the white room swing away. In case of a launch emergency where the crew had to get out quickly, it could come back in about 15 seconds. At T-minus 5 minutes, they're going to start up the hydraulics. This is what is going to power the air surfaces, the ailerons, the rudder, and most important, the main engine steering. Looks like...
Let's watch the clock to see if
we're just getting ready to pick it up.
5 seconds to go.
T-minus 9 minutes and counting.
Fantastic.
The countdown events are now being controlled by the ground launch sequencer from now until the T-minus 3.
And let me point something out to you. When the hydraulics do come on, we will then start to test all of the equipment. You'll see in the close-up views of the shuttle, the ailerons will start to move, and eventually we'll actually see the engine bells moving. And this is an incredible moment for the astronauts sitting in there, because they can feel the entire shuttle start to shake. This is about 3.5 minutes before launch, and it's a spooky feeling, really, to be sitting there knowing that you're not supposed to launch for another 3.5 minutes, and yet all of a sudden things start to shake underneath you.
All right, 8:20 to go. Unless the clock stops, it'll be launched in 8:16, 8:15, 8:14 seconds. When do you feel it, Jeff Hoffman, that you're really going to go? Is it that moment when they say, put your visor down?
I think for me that was it, and that's what a lot of people say when, you know, all the equipment is getting ready, but your final preparation for launch is that moment when you say, crew, you go to close your visors come down, and I remember saying, all right, we're going.
Well, they haven't put the visors down yet. That would happen at T-minus 4. We're at T-minus 7:45.
And that, in fact, I heard Rick Hauk mention that they might want to delay that a little bit, and we'll stand by on that call.
Well, now, the new launch guidelines are that between T-minus 9 and T-minus 5, that's where we are now, being at T-minus 7.5, the ground launch system will be monitoring between 20% and 50% more items before committing to launch than was the case on previous shuttle flights.
And I think that's typical. By the way, there we see the access arm is retracting.
Back into position within about 15 seconds.
This arm is swinging away. The white room arm is swinging away from the shuttle.
One of the new things actually is an improved evacuation system from the whole pad.
7 minutes and counting.
And that access arm there is the first step of that. That access arm, of course, is not new. That's something that we always have had. They're in the process now of connecting the fuel cells up to power the shuttle's electrical system. So far, so good.
And the next thing to happen will be the pre-start the shuttle auxiliary power units. And that'll happen, in about 35 seconds.
Dan, that is one item that has given us some troubles in the past. That has been a problem sometime in the earlier launches in particular. But so far, looks pretty good.
Auxiliary power units, or APUs, at the 6-minute point. This consists of positioning a number of switches.
And launch control is making preparations for starting up the hydraulic systems. At this point, what you have to realize is that the guts of the system are starting to come alive. They're getting ready to pre-start the APU, which means to put the auxiliary power unit into its launch configuration. This power unit is powering the hydraulic system. Just to give you an idea of what's involved here, imagine an engine the size of what is in your car putting out 50,000 horsepower, That's what these auxiliary power units are doing, and you can imagine what's involved in making sure that they all work successfully.
Now, in about a half a minute, it's T minus 5:30. The next important thing to happen to the auxiliary power units are activated to provide hydraulic power to the shuttle. And if any difficulty should develop in that, the auxiliary power units being activated to provide that hydraulic power to the shuttle, that would be trouble. So this is the thing to look for. Let's pick up NASA's official voice on the countdown and see how that goes, the activating of those auxiliary power units.
T minus 5 minutes and counting.
This is go for orbiter APU start. And BLT, perform the APU restart. Roger, inward.
Pilot Dick Covey now is flipping the 3 switches in the cockpit to start each of the 3 APUs. The liquid oxygen replenishing of the LOX tank has been terminated at this point, and the liquid oxygen fill and drain valve is closed.
The voice is Hugh Harris.
4 minutes, 30 seconds.
See, the APUs are up and running. Copy that.
All right.
The auxiliary power units up and running, according to pilot Dick Covey.
CDR, reconfigure heaters. Roger, that's complete.
As the tank is prepared for full pressure.
And they will now be testing the various systems which are powered by hydraulic
Coming up on
powers,
the
as I said, the flight controls, and most important, the engine steering.
Yes, so that's been done.
The crew has...
We're at that point where the final helium purge of main engines is conducted, and the crew should be told to close visors and breathe pure oxygen any moment now. Let's pick it up.
Underway. The orbiter flight control surfaces, such as elevon, speed brakes, and rudders, are now being moved through a pre-programmed pattern to verify that they're ready for launch.
You can see the rudder moving.
Just begin to see that rudder move just a little in there.
And that's when the astronauts really begin to feel things inside.
Keep your eye on the engine bells now. There's the engine bells starting to move.
Moved in a pattern to verify their readiness to support the ascent flight control. After going through their paces, they'll be aligned to their start position.
Which gives the shuttle the ability to steer while it's flying.
Middle of the screen, you can see those tests being run to make sure
We're coming up on the
that they work.
3-minute
Apparently they do.
count at T minus 2 minutes 55 seconds. The start of the external tank liquid oxygen pressurization will begin.
Just very
3
quickly,
minutes and counting.
What you'll be seeing
And the gaseous
about 10
nitrogen
seconds
purges
before
of
the
main
launch will be a
engines
deluge of water splashing.
The ground launch sequencer has started to retract the gaseous oxygen vent hood or beanie cap on the external tank.
I'd like to have you clear caution warning memory and verify no unexpected errors.
The computers will make a final check to ensure the vent arm is fully retracted at the 37-second point. T minus 2 minutes 30 seconds in counting. Ground supplies of hydrogen and oxygen for the orbiter fuel cells has been turned off. Discovery is now running on its onboard reactants.
The beanie cap is coming off the top of the external tank there, so.
Coming up on the 2-minute point in our countdown.
Well, gentlemen, and for those of you who are in the audience, let's say as little as possible from 2 minutes down and hope this baby gets up.
T minus 2 minutes and counting. Liquid hydrogen replenish of the external tank has stopped and pressurization to flight level is underway. The vehicle is now isolated from all ground propellant and fluid loading equipment.
Roger, that's complete. Yeah, let's just go for ET LH2 pressurization.
T minus 90 seconds and counting. Less than 2 minutes away from the launch of STS-26 and its crew of 5. And we have heard that the clock will hold at 31 seconds.
In TDST, it's a cabin pressure rate of change. Okay, copy. DCO.
We're anticipating the clock will hold at T minus 31 seconds due to a failure. We have not heard what that is yet.
It's going down.
Cabin pressure.
Probably due to the increase.
Not good news. They're going to stop it at 31 seconds. Jeff,
That's correct. The words I heard were a cabin pressure rate of change.
50 seconds and counting. We're going to clear.
And what does that mean?
Well, I want to hear if that has anything to do with the fact that the crew had just put down their visors. That gives an extra spurt of oxygen into the cabin. It's something they've done before, but I think we have to stand by.
Not stopping the clock.
Not stopping the clock, so 34 seconds to go.
That was my guess of what happened.
31 seconds. We have a go for auto-sequence start. Discovery's 4 redundant computers have assumed T-minus 23 seconds and counting. The SRB nozzle profile. T-minus 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. We're go for main engine start. 7, 6. We have main engine start. 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Roger, roll, Discovery. Crew confirms roll program. Houston now controlling. 3 engines at 104%. Let's go, baby. 3 good APUs, 3 good fuel cells. Standing by to begin. Throttle down to 65%.
Get up.
Engines throttling down now to maintain surge speed as the spacecraft passes through max Q. To see engines begin to throttle back up at about 59 seconds.
Right.
Mark 1 minute. Velocity 2,300 feet per second. Altitude 5.9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 3 nautical miles. Discovery, go at throttle up.
Roger, go.
Discovery given a go at throttle up. 3 engines at 104%. Velocity 3,200 feet per second. Altitude 10.8 nautical miles. Downrange distance 8 nautical miles. At 25 seconds from solid rocket booster separation. 1 minute 45 seconds. 3 engines at 104%. Velocity 4,800 feet per second. Altitude 20 nautical miles. Downrange distance 19 nautical miles. Standing by for solid rocket booster separation.
These are the solid rocket boosters dropping away as they are supposed to do.
Solid rocket boosters have separated. 2 minutes, 20 seconds.
Shuttle has passed 150,000 feet up and more.
5,600 feet per second velocity, 31.8 nautical miles. Altitude, downrange distance, 38 nautical miles.
The crew's experienced an acceleration of about 1 G at this point. Prior to SRB separation, they were up to about 2.5 Gs.
3 APUs still running at normal speed. 3 good fuel
cells.
cells.
Still have that huge external tank, which will go with them all the way to drop at this time 600 miles from Hawaii.
The ride is now extremely smooth.
We'll be hearing some call-ups here shortly from the Capcom about the capability to reach transatlantic sites.
Riding the solids is like being inside a train wreck.
6,200 feet per second. Altitude 41 nautical miles. Downrange distance 60 nautical miles.
Well, as Discovery begins to fade out of view from even our television cameras, up there and out there, everything looks and sounds, Jeff Hoffman, to be working extremely well.
But remember, it's not over until it's over, so we got 5 minutes still to get up into space, and we've got to stand by. I guess we have some animation.
Discovery, 2-engine Maroon.
That means if they lose a...
That call-up indicating Discovery may be able to achieve a transatlantic abort at Moroni if that were to become necessary. Return status and mission control positions all report go.
This is animation that you're seeing here. Since Discovery is out of sight now, what they're talking about is if it should become necessary, this is standard procedure, they'd put it down at an emergency landing site in Spain. No indication of any difficulty. But these are the critical moments having shed its solid rocket boosters at about 150,000 feet, or maybe slightly above that.
Negative return.
The shuttle, the orbiter, is still attached to the liquid fuel tank, still riding with that liquid fuel tank as it goes hundreds of miles up.
They can no longer return to the Cape, even if
4
they lose
minutes,
an
20
engine.
seconds, velocity 8,700 feet per second, altitude 59 nautical miles, downrange distance 148 nautical miles.
We had one shuttle flight where we lost a single engine. Our flights are designed so we can lose a single engine at any time and still recover the shuttle and the crew safely.
Now, it's 4 minutes and 40 seconds since the liftoff. Everything looks good. The next thing to look for will be at about the 7.5 minute mark when the engines begin to throttle back to avoid shuttle approaching 3 Gs of gravitational pull, which the equipment could not tolerate.
If they lose an engine,
Follow-up
they can
indicates
make it to
Discovery
orbit.
could reach an abort to orbit on 2 engines if that were to become
They're going to be able to
necessary.
make it to orbit now.
All right, the good news, they can make it to orbit. Even if they were to lose an engine now, a single engine, one single engine, they could make it into orbit.
65.7 nautical miles, downrange distance 203 nautical miles.
We're about 3.5 minutes away from a next real crucial movement, and that is with the main engine cutoff, which will come at about 8 minutes 30 seconds into the flight. At that point, they're in orbit.
And Bruce, people are, excuse me, Jeff, for one moment, people sometimes are confused. You're looking at our animation, and we give you the next event, the next most important thing, main engine cutoff. That's the MECO. Main engine cutoff at 8:31. Shuttle begins to prepare for external tank separation at that point. The speed in miles per hour, you can see time from liftoff is 5:41. But, Bruce, you see the orbiter is riding upside down. People sometimes say, well, their animation got off. Not true. This is the way the orbiter is riding at the moment. It is riding below, if you will, attached to, but below its liquid oxygen and hydrogen liquid fuel tank.
This is the way that it goes into space, and during a variety of times during the trip, they will be riding upside down. And it is something that is easy to confuse people with, but due to the methods that we have to go into space, this is the safest and the best way to get there, with the huge external tank, the fuel tank, on top, which will remain there until they make almost the first orbit.
Achieve a single engine landing at Van Jewel, if that were to become
If you will, look in the right-hand corner of your screen, we give you the down range of approximately where the Discovery is in relation to the Earth's surface. In addition to time from liftoff, it's plus 6 minutes and 40 seconds, the speed in miles per hour, and the next major event, which is, as we mentioned, is the main engine cutoff to come at about the 8.5 minute mark. Jeff?
Let's also remember at MECO, we will be in space. We will not actually be in orbit until we fire our orbital maneuvering engines 45 minutes after launch. But we will have gotten through surely the most risky part of the whole mission.
Jeff, it's incredible to believe that it's now traveling at a speed of about 12,000 miles per hour. Its top speed, when it reaches its top speed, about
17,000.
About 17,000 miles per hour. Well, everything looks and sounds excellent at the moment, does it not, Jim?
Even if they lose 2 engines, they can still make it to orbit.
Another milestone passed. Even if they were to lose 2 of the engines now, they could still make it into orbit.
The other thing that's happening now, we have full thrust out of the engines, but because so much fuel has been burned off and it's lighter, the acceleration has built up. The crew is being pressed down into their seats with a force of 3 times Earth's gravity, and in order to avoid exceeding that, the engines are actually starting to throttle down. Let's remember, these are the first rocket engines of this size that have ever been able to throttle down.
As we wait for main engine shutdown, let's go to Peter Van Sant, who was watching with thousands of other people here at the Cape. Peter?
Dan, NASA just scored the winning touchdown late in the 4th quarter with these folks. There was tremendous cheering, excitement. Despite the fact we're about 13 miles away, you could still feel some of that vibration, and the sound was tremendous. I've got a couple of people here who just watched the launch. What'd you think?
Unbelievable. It was so great. I mean, I almost feel like crying. I'm so proud to be an American. I've been here all night long. It's fantastic. It's unbelievable. Words can't describe it. For all the people sitting back home, you know, in their living room watching it, it's nothing like being here watching it. It's just right over there. Unbelievable. I'm so proud. It's great.
We're back in space.
Thank God. All right.
How about you?
Yes, unbelievable. I'm from England, and, well, just to be here is absolutely a miracle. You know, to see that go up was something I've always wanted to see, and I'm glad I did.
Okay, tremendous. Back to you, Dan. Lots of enthusiasm.
Thanks, Peter. Now, let's set the scene for you. Everything looks and sounds perfect. as best anyone can determine. The launch has reached the point where even if Discovery should have 2 engines fail, they could make orbit. We're just told they are in orbit. They have just now reached orbit, and what good news that is.
Altitude. Standing by for external tank separation.
They're going to drop the large external tank now, which will eventually fall back down into the ocean.
Waiting for word that they've done that. Always a major moment when the external tank separates from the shuttle itself and leaves the orbiter there in orbit.
And this is an incredible...
Discovery, your go for APU shutdown on time.
That means Mission Control is satisfied that they can stay in orbit. So they're going to shut down their hydraulic systems. They're no longer needed.
Power to operate the aerodynamic services
Bottom line at
and
this
to
time,
gimbal the
Dan,
engines.
we've got a great flight.
Well, on that line, that bottom line, at this moment, we've got a great flight. Discovery is in orbit. Let's pause for this message.
X-Lax presents some gentle guarantees. A feeling of freshness, of confidence, and the peace of mind that comes from the X-Lax guarantee. Taken at bedtime, X-Lax is guaranteed to work gently, effectively, by 8 a.m. or your money back. So you can start the day feeling like yourself again. And that's a promise you can count on. X-Lax, guaranteed complete relief by 8 a.m.
In keeping with the special spirit of the U.S. Olympic team, Buick presents 3 special Regal Olympic coupes. 3 distinctive personalities, from sporty to luxury. There's nothing more regal on the great American road. Red, white, and Buick. Now at your Buick dealer for a limited time.
Good morning.
The day's looking new and bright.
It's Monday again.
And you're gonna start it right.
Traffic's tied up.
'Cause there's Folgers for you that's decaffeinated too. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
A decaffeinated? And I'm waking up?
Nothing brightens your morning like mountain-grown Folgers decaffeinated. Mountain-grown coffee beans have more enticing aroma and richer flavor than any other kind.
Folgers so rich and good, the day starts like it should.
You know something? It's starting to look a lot better out there.
The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
Decaffeinated.
Sometimes minor mouth pain can be major trouble. Maximum Strength Anbesol gives maximum strength relief on contact. So before you can say Tchaikovsky, the pain's gone. Maximum Strength Anbesol. It's major relief.
Oxygen and dumping it into the cabin.
Well, good news, Discovery is in orbit. Remember that you have the orbiter itself. These solid rocket boosters dropped off at about 150,000 feet. It's already jettisoned its liquid fuel tank, and now what you have in orbit is the orbiter itself. What good news. Leslie Stahl was among those watching the launch with a classroom full of people in Virginia. Leslie?
Dan, I'm here with the dreamers, young high school science students still dreaming about going into space themselves. They're working on a science project that NASA has already approved to go up as a student science experiment in a future Challenger flight. But I want to show you, we taped their faces, their expressions, their excitement when the launch went up. I wonder if we can roll the tape and show you their reaction. Dan, as I said, they're the dreamers, and I asked them right before if they all wanted to go up in space, and all but 2 people raised their hand and said they did. I'm standing here next to their teacher, who was Ron Fortunato, who was one of the finalists in the Teachers in Space contest that Krista McAuliffe won. Ron, what were your reactions and your feelings when this was a successful launch today?
Oh, it was just perfect. The launch went up, and I can remember clearly 2 years ago we were sitting here watching it, and I saw clearly today what the future of our space program is, and maybe just as important, what the future of education is for these kids.
Terrific. Krista McAuliffe said, "I touch the future, I teach." These kids are going to be watching on a computer, tracking the shuttle as it goes along, and they're also, by the way, Dan, tracking the Soviet space station. And Ron told me that they're both, or were at least at one point, both at the same longitude. Back to you, Dan. I'm with the Dreamers.
Thank you, Leslie. Aren't we all dreaming today? Joining us now is Michael Collins, who was on board Apollo 11, the launch that went to the moon. I know you're excited about what happened here today. Your impressions?
That was just a wonderful launch, Dan. I've never seen a finer one. Of course, waiting around an extra hour or two doesn't hurt things either. Your feeling of anticipation.
Here's a tape replay of the liftoff.
Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
Crew confirms roll program. Houston now controlling.
Michael, as you saw this happening, Michael Collins, what were you thinking? At this particular moment, they were just about reaching the point, soon to reach the point where we had the terrible Challenger disaster. It must have gone flashed through the mind.
I think so, and especially the mind of the crew, of course, as the same terminology in the air-to-ground, ground-to-air voice was used, so they were hearing the same messages, of course, that the Challenger crew heard. But as I was watching it, I was thinking back to Saturn V days and sort of looking comparatively at the two machines. They're quite similar but quite different. This one gets up and goes a bit quicker than the old Saturn V used to do.
Ending by to see engines begin to throttle back up at about 59 seconds.
Well, what a sight this was to see it disappear
Mark 1 minute,
intact
velocity 2,300 feet per second, altitude 5.9 nautical miles, downrange.
The main purpose of this flight to get out the tracking and data relay system satellite. This is a $100 million satellite, identical to the one destroyed aboard the Challenger. That's the main purpose of this mission. Other purposes are what?
Well, they'll do a number of scientific experiments during the 4 days that they're up there, but as you say, the deployment of this communications satellite will allow NASA to save a lot of money in that it won't need the extensive network of ground stations that we used to require during Apollo days. 2 of these satellites in orbit will give NASA almost continuous coverage. So just as satellites are very much a part of our lives, communication satellites allowing us to see the Olympics, so NASA is using them to best advantage.
And Jeff Hoffman, very briefly, the astronauts are in orbit now. They haven't made one complete circle of the Earth. What are they thinking? What are they doing?
Right now, they are busy as anything. There's a lot of things to do to get a shuttle, once it's in space, ready to stay in orbit. That's what they're working on. I'd like to say one thing. We just heard our launch director thank the launch crew, and I know something that the astronauts are very aware of is they may be on top of the pyramid, and they're the ones in space, but there's thousands of people who have done an awful lot of work to get them there, and they appreciate it, and we all appreciate it.
Well, as we said on last night's CBS Evening News, NASA was the can-do agency that worked. It was eager to prove that it still worked, and this morning, so far, it has done exactly that.
I think it's important to remember this is a first step. It's a big first step. We've still got a mission to go ahead of us, and it's also true that one mission doesn't make a space program. We've got a lot of work to get our space program back going, but this is a great way to start.
We'll take a break and come back after these messages.
I'll bet I know why they made Grape Nut cereal so small.
So they could fit a lot in this little box.
They made it so small so there wouldn't be room for things you don't want.
Like a flat tire?
Not exactly, but try there's no room for added sugar.
Or preservatives.
Being all natural takes up all the room.
One might say that there is no room for improvement.
One might say that.
Post Grape Nut cereal, the one and only.
I couldn't tell anybody my problem. I couldn't tell my boss, I don't feel like coming to work because I'm constipated. Some excuse. What's he gonna say? Hey, take a laxative. Sure. Then get on the bus and hope that it doesn't kick in? Then one simple idea changed my life. Daily fiber therapy. Metamucil fiber therapy. See, fiber helps keep you regular, but I wasn't getting enough. Now I get plenty. And Metamucil fiber won't irritate your system like a harsh chemical laxative. Works with your body, safely, naturally. So, with Metamucil every day, I got regular and stayed regular. Now when I talk to my boss, I say, hey, how about a raise?
Metamucil, and you could stay regular for the rest of your life.
I have a handsome new neighbor.
Oh, Mother.
A doctor. Oh, my. Here he is.
Hi. Think fast. Think best savers with fast-acting mint crystals.
Dinner tomorrow?
Perfect.
The new Buick Riviera. It's a classic all over again.
The road has been waiting, you're anticipating the spirit you felt way back when. Riviera is back, a classic again. It's a legend once more, what the road's waiting for. Riviera, a classic returns. Oh, the great American road belongs to Buick.
Up there, out there, on the high frontier, they're waiting for the final burn to put them in what they scheduled orbit. That's what's happening at the moment. They want to fire those small orbiter engines that allow them to maneuver themselves into that, for this mission at least, ultimate orbit. You hear a lot that this is a shakedown mission, nothing too daring being attempted on the first flight of the shuttle in 32 months. But correspondent Charles Osgood reminds us that this may be, in some ways is, the most daring and courageous shuttle crew of them all.
It is dangerous, of course. To challenge the frontiers of knowledge or of space means always to put someone's life on the line. Experience has taught us that painful lesson. None of us has forgotten so soon or ever can forget.
This is Freedom 7. The fuel is go.
John Glenn reports he is ready.
But remembering it, to accept the danger and to go ahead anyway, that is true courage. What these astronauts do is all the more awesome because they know so well the chance they take. They do it in the name of the others who have gone before and those who are to come. At such moments, they are mankind at its noblest and most vulnerable.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Excelsior, the ancient Greeks said, always upward. In a way, we ride with them, for how can the rest of us not be moved and inspired in striving for our own dreams